JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, February 23:30 on this Friday afternoon. Really quick rant, talk about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P, a far cry from this morning, up 0.6% here on the heels of the Supreme Court ruling, right? SCOTUS knocking down the tariffs. Oh my gosh. You can kind of see the reaction. I guess the market, it was pretty much, I wouldn't say fully priced in, but saw the volatility at first. I said, "Oh my gosh, it must be the ruling that came out." And then, sure enough, a ruling came out, and yeah, who knows how this all plays out even after this is done, right? To me, this ruling just puts to rest the possibility that there'll be some Friday 2:45 p.m. post or tweet from POTUS saying they're going to slap tariffs on XX country for whatever percent, right? So that's kind of that's off the table. I mean, I'm sure it'll be replaced by some other threat or ammunition they have that might move markets, royal markets, intraday or into a weekend, over the weekend, right? Those are the ones that get me the most. Is when you think it's going to be a quiet weekend, and then you have some kind of geopolitical event or something that might rattle markets, and then you worry where things are going to open up on Monday. Anyway, so to me, certainty is always good for markets. Uncertainty is not good for markets. So the certainty that the tariff situation we had in the past is not going to happen in the future, that's a good thing. How this all plays out, is it a 10% broad base tariff on all imports? Who knows what that all looks like? Right now, it's like the market doesn't even look like it cares too much. Is there going to be 2 3 year backlog on all these suits on folks trying to get the tariffs money paid back, the rebates, the refunds? Who actually paid them? How much are they getting back? It all get worked out. It's just we got that out of the way. So that was today. Instead of the good thing, instead of talking about the GDP number, right? 3% estimates going in this morning. 1.4% GDP for the fourth quarter, way below expectations. Then you look at the PCE data, a little higher than expectations. Could have been a rough day today, right? SPY, I was talking about 677. That was my concern. We got all the way down to 681 and change before that ruling came out. Let's see where we were right at the ruling. So to me, my hope here today is that let's see, the SPY was 684 when the ruling came. Is we could find some footing, right? That's what what's the next headwind for markets? The software situation, is that still going? Today you have more Claude updates this time in the security sector, right? I don't know exactly what that plays out to. Um, why don't I have this up here? Oh man! But look at CrowdStrike today, taking on the chin. Then you look at one of my top 5 stocks, Frog, right? So I don't know if there's some plugin or something to Claude that able to scan, give users the ability to fix security issues. I don't know what that looks like, but obviously there's some impact when you look at some of these billion-dollar market cap erasures just on some of these updates. Hopefully that comes to an end at some point, right? But anyway, all right, so that's the overall markets. Next week's a lot of earnings, right? And I think there's some big names. Why don't I have this up here? Is Nvidia next week? And do I have this up here? Yep. Sorry, folks. I thought I had everything up here. February 25th, right? So yeah, big week after the close. All right, so I'll talk about, maybe I'll have my week ahead on Sunday. All right, so that's overall markets. To me, all week this week has been like the bather getting into the ocean. They're cold. They want to get accustomed, acclimated to the water, dip their toes in, get a little wet, put some splash some water on their shoulders, and they get accustomed to the water, and then able to get in and enjoy the water. And then they get used to the water, and it's a beautiful day, right? That's what I hope with the markets next week. Get a little accustomed, nibble some calls and puts. Hopefully, the call side get a little more aggressive and convict on names. That's what I'm hoping happens next week. So I was looking today. Do I want to add anything into this weekend? Maybe we have 20 minutes left. Sometimes I convince myself into some of these positions. We'll see. All right, it's overall markets. 700 on the spot. That's probably going to come next week. You would think we got up to 690. Upper Bollinger Band, plenty of room. 699.42. So, all right. So that's overall markets. Just quick on individual names. Oh, also software, right? IGV. It's not a sector or ETF that I look at, right? But is down 1% here today. Just want to see maybe we're done with the updates, and once those updates are done, yeah, all right, buying opportunities. All right, so that's overall market. Now, just quick on individual names. Worries this week. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm always looking for things to do better or what have you. But to me, it's like, what is the next area in the market that's going to go bonkers, right? And that's why I last weekend was Corning, right? And I was looking at Corning last couple of weeks. Finally got some calls today, but it's like, is there any other names that are under the radar? And if you know one of my top 5 stocks back in 2023, I think it was Sterling Infrastructure, right? So here's a name. It's not a sexy name. It's not one you really hear talked about. At least what I did as my top 5 stock, but it's a name that was a tailwind from the infrastructure bill, right? Trillions of dollars on the table. All these companies on the hook to be benefit from it. And then a lot of these projects and things don't just, it's not like someone just gives them the stamp, says, here, do this project and get the money. It's years worth of stuff. And there's backlogs and things that get worked through. But Sterling Infrastructure, anyways, one of those names that I looked at just as an infrastructure play. But then you have to start looking at what's going on with the data centers and all that fun stuff. So there's names that are benefiting on both sides from that. And so Sterling was always one of those. So not saying I'm getting calls on it, but then there's Fix, right? And Fix was going to be one of my top 5 stocks, but I went with BMI instead. But here's, again, not a sexy name, right? HVAC. Who thinks that an HVAC company is a hot stock, a meme stock, or a momentum name? But they were added to the S&P 500, so that helped add wind in the sails. And then this is one of those plays too. It's like if you're getting the fiber optics from Corning, you're getting all these other companies that have their hands in the pot and doing these data centers and all this build out. What other names benefit? Like who's doing the cooling, the HVAC side of the business, the plumbing, whatever. And here's the company. So, at some point, just the premiums are insane, right? But there's got to be other names that I'm missing under that on this build out. Now, I would say we're way into this, so it's not like this is early stages, inning number 1, 2, 3. But there's got to be some other names. So anyway, that brings me to Corning. But needless to say, over the weekend, I'll be looking for some more names. Fix had earnings this week. I was looking at calls. They were in like $200, $300, $400 out of money with 2 days left to expiration. Not my risk reward profile. So, all right. So this brings me to Corning. Corning, finally. And it's not like you look at Corning and it was like, okay, it could have ran up on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And I don't know what news or catalyst. There was other names going today, right? Other build out names that were running, other data center names, right? And lights going again today. So I don't know if that was something, but those have been running. The difference is Corning finally, after 6 or 7 days of indecisiveness, I would call it, finally broke out up 6.5%. UBS up their price target to 160 today. My hope, or not my hope, is my bull case here is that it's going to catch some FOMO. So here's going to be another weekend of people looking at some names. And I don't think a lot of people just do the one glance, right? Because they look and they see GLW and say, oh, it's Corning. They just, do glass. So they just do fiber optics. But there's more to that story, right? And, I talk about the different catalysts that are out there. Some of it's the scarcity part of it, right? Scarcity is always a good thing when you talk about a stock because there's not a lot of competition. They're not a monopoly. So that's not a concern. But they have the server side of things. At some point, that's going to be replaced as other tailwinds. But anyway, I still look at this. I think it's going 150 plus in the next week or two, a couple weeks. And I think it's going, if you get some FOMO, it might go to $200. I was doing a rundown, and there's going to be some deals announced. I don't know if it's going to be with Google or some other one of these other names outside of Meta. They're going to lock up, whether it's just going to be, they're going to make sure that they allocate supply, right? So they're going to get like 10%, like Lumen did with Corning back in 2024. They're going to, get a requirement or whatever it is. So whether it's that deal or straight up cash deal, whatever it's going to be, there's going to be more of them. And I was doing the math, and it won't take much from this. And it's their forward multiple. I think it's like a 73 PE ratio. And I don't really care too much about PEs, but I do when people look at valuations and say, oh, Corning's going to be, it's it shouldn't be multiple. It should be trading at $150 a share with a P at $73, 73 times earnings. But when I look at Corning, if it does one more deal, it drops to like 43 of $6 billion, right? The same kind of carbon copy of what they did with Meta. And then if there's another deal around $6 billion, it drops into the 30s. And then if there's more than those deals, then you have to start looking at this is a name that maybe it's 200. I think I was trying to do the market cap. I think it at $200 a share, it goes up to like 175 billion. Anyway, I'm not going to go too much in a rant too much further, but obviously you can see why I think this might catch some fire. I don't think it will take much. And so got those. First, I was looking for strikes because the premiums have been expensive on Corning all week. So even if I got calls Monday, Tuesday, they were pretty much the same, even when it was ramping this morning. But finally, I was looking for March strikes. I'm like, let me get the March 150s. I'm not normally someone who gets closer in the money strikes that have that much premium built in, but concerning the stock, and I think if it goes up to 170, the 150s to 250 will be, you know, 7, 8, even at, more than that bagger. So that was the thought process there. So once I got those, then I was looking for some strikes to play near term. I got the February 27 150s. You look at the volume today, and I posted earlier today. I don't even know what the update is right now, but there was 4,000 contracts traded just on that 150 strike that expired next week. 5,600 calls have traded on that strike. There was an open interest of 426. So, do the math. That's 4.3K of new option volume that came into that strike today. Not only that, and I don't know if there's a spread, so I have to go and look. The $128 calls for next week. There's 1,000 open interest, so you can make the case that maybe someone sold those, or maybe they had to sell to open. I don't know. But there's 1.1 thousand of those contracts traded today. Mind you, those are trading at $12. So incredible option volume. I keep saying, like, this is going to catch FOMO like SanDisk. Maybe it's going to be a mini SanDisk. So instead of it going from 150 to $200 to 700, maybe it's going to go from 140 to 200, right? That's kind of, hey, I would love it to have a SanDisk type move. That'd be phenomenal. But you do the metrics and all those, you start running the numbers. And not only that, it's an old company, right? So it's not, yeah, it's a lot harder for it to move, right? It doesn't have like the mystery of the unknown. SanDisk was a mystery of an unknown because of a recent spinoff, and came back from the dead. It was acquired, then taken, removed from the public eye, then taken back to the public eye. All right, so that's Corning. So hopefully more opportunities next week. So I locked some of the 150s in. At first I'm like, do I hold the rest into next week? But just don't know. There could be some kind of rug pull. I put that when I added the position because you just don't know, right? The market, nothing's certain, right? The only thing certain is, death and taxes and whatever. But so I didn't want to be in a spot where that happens. So I locked some in for 100% to cover costs, locked some more in to take some profits. And then with the higher strike, I locked some of those in for close to 100% just to cover the costs. And I'll just hold those into next week and revisit, right? So finally, good way to end the week on Corning. And if there's more updates, maybe I'll have a better, more in-depth piece. All right, so then just quick on other names. RH, I was talking about this morning on the Rant. I was talking about it yesterday afternoon, trying to figure out what RH would do on a tariff news, right? And if it was, even if the Supreme Court decided to keep the tariffs on, I don't know if RH would have went up or down either. So that's kind of like the riddle me that situation. Like, riddle me that. What would happen if the Supreme Court kept the tariffs on? Would RH be up at 250 right now? Would it be down to 180? I really don't know, to be honest. But sure enough, when that news came out, the first thing I did is look for some strikes on RH. And funny enough, for future reference, the rulings or opinions came out at 10 o'clock. So that's typically, I guess, the time they normally do. So RH, the strikes, the ask went to $10. And then I tried to fiddle really quick on some 230s. And by that time, it was like impossible. So I just had on my hands. And then I was watching on the way down, and the 230s, I think it was the 230s. They stayed at $1 even with the stock at 215. So you could have, if you got the stock, the calls yesterday, hindsight's 2020. But anyway, needless to say, with that ruling and what's going on with RH, certainty is much better than uncertainty. I think I'm surprised, to be honest, that RH is not melting higher into the end of the day here. So maybe that means it's probably not going to ramp higher next week. Kept me away. I was actually looking at some spec lottos, the 210s and the 21250s and the 215s. But I'll revisit over the weekend if I can kind of get a little more confidence or conviction on direction on RH. Don't be surprised if I'm back in on that one. So that was RH. And then obviously some other names, Serve Robotics. I mean, take a look at the chart here. I took down my annotations so you can see. I can talk about this one, so I'm blue in the face. I'm a little under the weather, so sorry about I can't breathe through my nose today. But Serve Robotics sitting here at 950 again, doesn't make sense to me. 40% of its valuation is in cash, probably more than that right now. Is it, they're burned through, right? So I think they're burning through 30 million a quarter. I have to probably dig into a little deeper on the metric side of things because it's not like it's a biotech that has no revenues, but biotechs do spend money on staffing and the studies and paperwork and all that fun stuff. I have to figure out the cost on the robots. Like, what does that look like? So we'll probably get better line of sight when they report earnings, and their earnings is March. I think they just announced the date, right? It's not. Is it March 3rd? They didn't announce the date yet. They announced earnings last year, March 6th. So is it March 6th? Yeah. Ooh, okay. So maybe that's the one I get, anyway. So we'll get more line in sight because now that they have 2,000 plus robots roaming the streets, probably going to figure out more in regards to how much that cost, right? So that's a big aha. Maybe that's why there's a huge short interest because it's obvious you can make a bear case on a company that's not profitable, right? So easy to the headlines coming. Serve Robotics is blowing through 30 million a quarter, which I think their last quarter was like 36 million. So that's kind of, I guess, the bear case. That's why the short interest is at an all-time high, right? When I first started looking at the stock back in spring, I think the short interest was minimal. Maybe it was 15%. So anyway, boggles my mind. At some point, I'll continue to add more strikes. That's serve. And then other names here, Enphase, look like it was finally get going today. I mean, take a look at this chart, right? I added some more arrows to my annotations. It's looking a little sloppy here. Come on, man. Sorry here, folks. So just really quick, I mean, take a look at SolarEdge today. It's up 8.7%. Wells Fargo adjusted their price target. I don't know if some of the reason the Supreme Court, the ruling with the tariffs, the solar sector and energy sector, it's a heavily tariffed sector, right? So to me, there's some concern because, I mean, First Solar's up today too, right? They have earnings next week. Riddle me. Yeah, so gosh, I don't have all my stuff. I'm sorry. So typically, uh, names that in the solar sector do well when there's tariffs on the China space, right? I could go on a whole rant on the China sector and how they flooded the U.S. market with inexpensive wafers and all that stuff, right? And so sometimes when you see a name like First Solar, it's a heck of a lot less expensive to do business in China. It just is, right? So First Solar has a lot of their factories in the U.S. and some reason. I mean, I think it should be trading substantially higher. Is they're one of those companies that is part of the new administration's, build in the U.S. kind of theme, right? So when you have tariffs coming off, I think that's totally different though. I think that actually is not going to be something that's nixed because it's not something that POTUS threw on the China sector. I think it was the government is throwing on a China solar sector. So I have to dig more into that. So maybe, yeah. All right. So forget about that. I'll have to look more into that. But you can see them rallying after the tariff ruling. So, yeah. So I was looking at SolarEdge to add some more. I'll have to revisit this over the weekend, figure out how the impacts here. But anyway, take a look at the Enphase chart, and I added more annotations. It was back in sell the open news until this afternoon. Then I had to spike off the tariff news. So kicking myself. I'll go back into the audio, months from now. I'll come back to February 20th and talk about Enphase. And I bet you it's a $60, $70 stock. It's just a matter of how I'm going to trade this. All right, so that's Enphase. Got myself all rattled here. Anyway, all right. So with the tariff, with the news coming out of Supreme Court, then you had other names going, right? The Shopify, and kicking myself because my 132 strikes were almost over a double. It got all the way up to 131, and then I'm on the fence. I'm like, do I close those out and get strikes into next week? By the time I start to figure that out, just like 11:45, stocks start to melt, and the rest is history. 138 change. That's the 50-day moving average on Shop. So maybe a name I'll visit on Monday. And then Roblox, right? Frustrating today. It's like these names that Lemonade. Look at Lemonade again today. It's like, how the heck is Lemonade not getting a bid, right? I mean, the story, if you had told me their earnings Monday, I would have told you the stock is $100 and it's sitting here 57. And the thing is, I think it's $100 stock, and then it just I could buy calls to play for a move to $100, but it doesn't matter what I think, right? So one of these days, it's got, I don't know. So, all right, so that's Lemonade. Other names, Moderna. I keep looking at Moderna the last 2 or 3 days, right? I mean, that whole news with the FDA, then you have the CEO come on. They had their earnings, had a nice spike end of day yesterday. Here it is at $50. That's another one of those names. I'll do my audio in 2 months from now, and I'll come back to February 20th, and I'll be like, oh, Moderna is now a $70, $80 stock. Just how to trade it, right? All right, that's it, folks. I'm trying to think of some of the other names I was looking over the weekend. Fix, Ever, SolarEdge, Light, SanDisk, Enphase. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. I had some other names in my back of my head. Coco. Coco, thankfully I didn't add the calls yesterday, and then it's bouncing here today. I think some of that Celsius is going today, too. That's it, folks. Have a great weekend. I'll be back. Rock and roll.